My name is Jamin. I'm your first friend in Alaska. I'm also an associate real estate broker in South Central Alaska. Today, we're going to be talking about some unvarnished truths/facts about living in Alaska. And, you know, they're kind of pet peeves. They're kind of just things you need to be aware of if you're moving up here. Some of these might not be a big deal to you at all. They might become a big deal to you. You might not think they're a big deal. Then you move up here and you're like, yeah, that's kind of annoying now as well. I kind of agree with Jamin, but we'll go ahead and go through this and I'll let you decide if it's a big deal or not. Before we get started though, make sure you give this video a big like and subscribe, and make sure you comment in the comment section down below for any of the unvarnished truths that really spoke to you. Okay. Let's go and jump into it. All right, one of the big ones right off the bat, and I know I'm probably going to get some pushback here and some people who aren't really going to like this point, but if you are living in Alaska, you're living in a state where we had to give away a lot of land mass in order to even become a state, and it feels like we almost had to give up like a part of our soul just to become admitted to the union when we had so much to offer, and this should have been just an absolute shoe-in. Obviously, Alaska should become a state, but the only way we were able to do that was by essentially giving away a bunch of land to the national park system. We gave away about 87,500 square miles. Just to give you context on how big that is, there are 15 states that are smaller than that, including Utah, Idaho, Kansas, Nebraska, South Dakota, North Dakota, Washington, Oklahoma, Missouri, Florida, Wisconsin, Georgia, Illinois, and Iowa. You think maybe the national park system got a little carried away and maybe took too much land away. And the reason that this is kind of a big deal, at least in my mind, is these are usually the best areas for going in, and the people are going to want to actually live and reside in because they're absolutely beautiful. Do we need to protect these areas? Absolutely. And also, there was a really heavy-handed way to go about doing that, because, I mean, I think we can all agree that's a little excessive, that you took away that much land. So, I don't imagine that's going to change anytime soon, but that's just kind of an unvarnished truth of living up here. That national park system took away quite a bit of our real estate really right from the jump. All right. I'm going to back away from that one because I know I'm probably going to get roasted alive in the comments section. Again, it's something that sounds about right if you're not living up here, but once you actually live up here, you realize, man, that's a lot of land we gave away. But anyway, moving on. The other thing I would say is Alaskans have a bad tendency of getting in their own way. Let me give you a couple examples. So one of the big ones is Alaskans do not want to be bothered by politics, okay? They just want to be left alone and do their own thing. That sounds perfectly fair. That's where most people are. But unfortunately, what that does is that allows a lot of politicians to come in who don't really represent the values that these isolating people are really interested in, and they end up just not representing them one single bit, and they look up and they're like, man, what's going on? I absolutely hate this. And it's like, well, you kind of just decided you were going to check out. So that's what happens. Another example on how Alaskans kind of become their own worst enemies and they kind of get in their own way is just balking at any kind of oversight whatsoever when we're talking about development. Now, I am not talking about the HOA Karens and stuff like that. I'm talking about just the bare basics of zoning and having some larger comprehensive plan on how things are going to develop. And I get it. A lot of people in the state, they didn't come here because they wanted to, have rules in place like this. But the problem of just this laissez-faire free-for-all in areas that are developing that have this strategy is there's a very low ceiling that gets set for the overall community. And once it's actually grown up and matured, it just becomes an absolute chaotic mess. And once it's done, it's done. You can't realistically go and tear down a bunch of buildings and just start over and say, okay, well, that was a mess. We don't want the mechanic shop right in the middle of the neighborhood. We don't want this industrial area right here that's got the absolute best views for the entire town. It's just stuff like that. So, yes, I understand there has to be some freedom in how people go about developing, but once it's gotten to the point where the end result is just a chaotic mess in a community that's just is a really low ceiling, and we're just rocketing right towards that low ceiling as fast as we can go. And then after that, it's just going to be a mess and not a place that anyone actually wants to live because it's so chaotic. And you kind of get into like some depressed areas at that point. Like it becomes a big deal. And this is going to be something that we don't feel immediately, but in the coming decades, it's something that you can really notice and appreciate about certain communities if they had good planning, and they also encourage development. So that's the other thing. You have to be able to encourage development by giving enough freedom for people to actually go and incentivize them. And also, you can't give so much freedom that it just becomes this laissez-faire free-for-all, and it's just complete chaos and nothing in the town actually makes sense. And there's no bigger vision on how everything was supposed to fit together. By the way, this vision really does come together as a result of collaborating with the community and getting everyone's voices in there and figuring out what everybody wants, and then trying to come up with a plan that's going to satisfy as many people as possible. And unfortunately, some areas are great on this, some areas not so much. And that's another way Alaskans get in their own way. All right, last reason here, last example on how Alaskans get in their own way, and that is they hate seeing development, and they kind of like, you kind of have to bring them along kicking and screaming. But they also complain that, hey, why aren't there any jobs? Why are people moving away? Because they don't have anywhere they can go in their careers. Why is the cost of living still so expensive? Why is the cost of housing continuing to go up? It's like, well, how do you think that happens? Of course, we got to have development. And unfortunately, so much of you have dug your heels in to the point where it's impossible in some areas to make that happen. And in the short term, I get it. And in the long term, again, it just does not serve the interests of the overall community in the big decades-wide perspective. So development is going to happen. It's a question of how is it going to happen, and people who just refuse to have that discussion just do not set the community up on a good trajectory. And okay, getting off my soapbox, moving on. All right, so that last little bit talking about the career and job opportunities not really materializing because there's resistance sometimes to the development. Yeah, the next one really brings me to the fact that unless you are in the trades or in the medical field, it is very difficult to have a career from start to finish in Alaska. And the reason for that is you have to get to a certain point of critical mass for the population and industry and commerce in order for that to actually happen. And for a lot of industries, we kind of have like a missing middle where like the middle management and all that, unfortunately, those job opportunities are just not there for them. And so, they love it here, wish they could stay here. But for a lot of people, when it comes down to sacrificing their career or living in Alaska, a lot of them, unfortunately, if they have growing families, is that, I'm sorry, we're just going to have to move. We got to provide for the family and love Alaska, and the opportunities are just not here. So that, unfortunately, is really sad thing to see. And hopefully it's something that gets fixed. I do see more effort being made to kind of develop those industries that are going to bring a lot more of those employment opportunities outside of the trades and the medical fields. If you're in those fields, you're in luck. Come up here. All right, let's go and take a break here real quick. I know this is really just sounding like Jamin's going on like a rant today, but let's take a bit of a break here real quick so I can cool off. I do host a podcast called the Alaskan Journey Podcast. I talk with people who have recently moved up here or people who've lived up here for a long time about what it's like living on the last frontier. And they're going to give you the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between. So you've got a good idea for what it's like living up here. And it's not like this really hyperbolic, ridiculous representation you get from watching some YouTube channels and reality TV shows. So do make sure you tune in for that. We've got a link for that in the description section down below. We've got it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, just about anywhere you can get podcasts. And we also do have it on the video version here on the YouTube channel as well. And also, if you're needing a copy of my relocation guide for those considering moving to Alaska, go to the website down below, register, put relocation guide in the little comment section so I know what to send you, and we'll make sure we get that sent over to you. Okay, let me finish out my rant today. You can't make any list about the unvarnished truth of living in Alaska without talking about the high crime rate. Now, recently, Alaska had its highest crime rate crown stolen by New Mexico. So that is fine. We'll let them have it. That is all theirs. But Alaska has some unique factors that makes it kind of misleading for us to be the highest or one of the highest crime rates as far as the state goes. The first being that it's a really small population. Like, I think there's only like 720 odd, 730 odd people who live in Alaska. And so when you have crime being done by people, it just throws all the stats off and has a disproportionate response from what you might find in other states. There's so few people here, we honestly could all fit in like a suburb of like Dallas or Houston or Chicago or, Seattle, any of these other big places. Also, once you get up here to Alaska, you're going to really appreciate there are certain areas where if you avoid them, you're probably not going to be running into a whole lot of trouble. And I will let you get up here and kind of figure that out yourself, check out the crime maps, draw your own conclusions. But yeah, that is just kind of a fact of living up here. The crime rate is high, and also if you have some good situational awareness and you kind of pay attention to the crime maps, and what non-real estate professionals can tell you, because unfortunately I cannot tell you good area, bad area. I can just direct you towards the crime maps and let you draw your own conclusions. Listen to the people who can shoot straight with you on those topics, and they will go a long way to avoiding the crime that everyone's talking about. Because you would think like everyone is just going to be robbed or murdered within days, just going off of the ridiculous hyperbolic headlines that are out there. All right, now another thing that a lot of people really aren't prepared for, and that doesn't really get as much attention, is that it is cold, it is dark. Get lots of attention on those. What they don't tell you though is it is also bright, and you can really get a bad seasonal effectiveness disorder during the winter time. You can also get like a lot of sleep deprivation during the summer times as well. If you don't have like the blackout blinds, and that can really go a long ways to messing with your sleep schedule. And then if you're not getting enough sleep, that can really mess with you mentally as well. A lot of people don't operate at their best when they're only going on like 3 or 4 hours of sleep. And so you really need to kind of solve for that within your own schedule and figure out like how to get as much sunlight in there as possible. You can use stuff like melatonin. Some people get really weird dreams. I went camping recently, used some melatonin because you can't really get a blackout blind tent, which that should exist, but unfortunately it doesn't. But yeah, I was taking like some melatonin, and I kept waking up throughout the night. It was like the same dream, and the dream was there was like a polar bear that like disguised itself as like a brown bear. It was like after me, and then like I woke up. I was like sleeping right next to the ocean. The dream kept going, and it was like, okay, well now, no, it's not the bear. It's seals that are out there. They're going to come up here and like mess me up too. And you just get these weird melatonin dreams. So if you have any weird melatonin dreams, like drop those in the comments section down below. I'd love to hear them. Last but not least, if you are living in Alaska, you will really appreciate that it is a very transitory state. And this is a good thing, and it can be a bittersweet thing because you get the opportunity to meet a lot of people, but unfortunately you have to say goodbye to a lot of people as well, because a lot of folks are here military, or they're here for like a certain phase of their life, and then that phase just kind of comes and goes, and they need to move elsewhere. Maybe they couldn't find a career opportunity that they could find somewhere else, and they don't want to leave, but unfortunately that's just a reality. And you have to kind of get good at making friends, just because it's a very transitory state. But this has been kind of my video talking about the unvarnished truth about living in Alaska. If you have any truths that you know of that you think need to be talked about, drop those in the comments section down below. I'd like this to be kind of a resource for people who are looking at making the move up here themselves. But thanks for hanging out with me. We'll see you next time.